Tonight on CFTK-TV, a terrace fundraiser on the coldest night of the year. The BC government prepares during economic uncertainty, and Ukraine remains absent in high-profile meetings.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damien Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. We begin tonight's cast with results from Smithers from what was reportedly a packed courtroom yesterday as ruling was delivered in the contentious case of Wet'suwet'en land defenders' claims of excessive police force and racism. Here is CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews with more.
A BC Supreme Court judge has found members of the RCMP made grossly offensive, racist, and dehumanizing remarks about Indigenous women who were arrested in a 2021 blockade of Coastal GasLink pipeline construction. Justice Michael Tammins said in a ruling delivered in Smithers on Tuesday that his findings of state misconduct don't warrant a stay of proceedings against two women, but they and another protester will get a reduction in their sentences for criminal contempt as an appropriate remedy. Chief Slato Molly Wickham, Shaylin Sampson, and Corey Jocko were convicted of criminal contempt for breaking the injunction in January 2024, but they applied to have the case stayed, alleging systemic misconduct by the police during the injunction enforcement. Tammins said Wickham and journalist Amber Bracken had recording devices on them that were seized by police during their arrests, but the devices kept recording after being placed in police vehicles. The devices captured conversations between police officers that referred to Wickham and Sampson in highly offensive and clearly racist terms, Tammins said. He said the audio recordings captured police laughing and comparing the women protesters, who had red handprints on their faces, to orcs from Lord of the Rings. He said the racist comments breached the charter rights of Wickham and Sampson. Wickham said the case was a showdown between Wet'suwet'en law and colonial law and hopes Tammins' decision will assist other land defenders in the future. Tammins did reject claims that police used excessive force or implied unnecessary resources to dismantle the blockade. Criminal contempt carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, for which the accused can now expect a reduction. The case will be back in court on April 3rd to fix a date for sentencing. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And now we look to Prince Rupert as they attempt to gain a hockey-related honor that Terrace has managed to win not too long ago. Here's Cale Maslin of CFTK-TV.
Back at the end of January, the city of Prince Rupert announced that they will be throwing their hat into the ring in the race to win the Kraft Hockeyville nomination for the year of 2025. The winner of the competition is set to get a $250,000 grand prize, alongside being named Hockeyville for the year. In an attempt to establish themselves in the race, the city's recreation department is calling on residents to share their positive stories, notes, and photos of the community on the Kraft Hockeyville's website's Prince Rupert page. And the Prince Rupert Mayor Herb Pond has also outlined his reasoning for why his city should get the nod.
I think more now than ever is in an interesting place in the country's history. When you look at the threats that are happening to the south of us, when you look at the demand from national politicians and provincial politicians to diversify our economy, where are we going to move new goods to? It's got to be out of one of several ports out to the world. And Rupert is Canada's third largest, fast growing. It's got such potential and opportunity, and that combined with the fact that we're about 50% Indigenous, and of course the natural beauty of the area that surrounds us, all good reasons why Prince Rupert should be the feature community.
An additional bonus feature of winning the bid will see the selected community host an NHL game, and Prince Rupert has promised to use the prize money to address their arena pad. March 2nd is the cutoff date for people to advocate on the Hockeyville website for their community, with 4 finalists being announced on March 15th, and a nationwide vote will determine the winner on April 4th. For CFTK TV I'm Cale Maslin.
And the struggles of the unhoused become all the more prevalent in the coldest months of the year. And a fundraiser will be taking place this weekend in both Terrace and Kitimat to raise funds for those who are struggling.
Coldest Night of the Year is a fundraiser where folks sign up to participate, you register, and then you tell your friends and family, I'm walking for homelessness and Coldest Night of the Year, and you collect donations, and that money goes to Kasan Society. So you can visit www.cnoy.org/terrace, and it's a very easy to use website. You can register to walk, you can make a donation, or you can register as a volunteer as well. The walk is 5 or 2 kilometers, depending on what you want to do. And I should also mention that it's on Saturday, February 22nd, and we're going to be starting from Suilax Community School.
And the event will also be taking place on the same evening in Kitimat, hosted by the Tamatik Status of Women. Anyone interested in registering there can do so at www.cnoy.org/Kitimat. Now, staying in Terrace, the city posted a reminder on their Facebook page that it is quite important for everyone living in the area that is currently in arrangements involving a short-term rental. Terrace's reminder said that the provincial government is now requiring everyone who is either a host of a short-term rental, a platform, or a strata hotel platform to register in their short-term rental registry. As part of joining the registry, all the hosts will be required to pay annual registration fees as well. The deadline to register is listed as May 1st, and as an incentive to get signed up a bit quicker, early registrants will have discounts made available to them. The city's post also contains a link that has more information on how registration will work. Those working in BC politics will have a record amount of representatives who will have a lot of work ahead to figure out the provincial economy. And according to a lieutenant, it is the most important time to be aware since of World War II. And here's Robert Buffum of CTV News.
There was plenty of pomp and ceremony leading up to the throne speech read by the Lieutenant Governor on behalf of the NDP government.
The most consequential time for our province since the Second World War.
The speech setting out the government's agenda for the new session was dominated by patriotic, even wartime rhetoric and calls to respond to President Trump's threats of tariffs and annexation.
We will never be the 51st state, not now or ever.
The threat of tariffs and indeed the threat of annexation hanging over Canada clearly is the frame through which every government decision has to be viewed.
Facing the massive tariff threats, the NDP pledged to cut red tape, reiterating 18 new resource-based projects, including for wind power, as it braces for a trade war with the states.
It's going to be the issue of the session. It is the issue of primary concern for so many British Columbian and Canadian families.
The speech cited tax credits to attract the film industry, legislation to streamline permitting and transportation infrastructure, plus laws to guard against credit card fraud, but was light on specifics or new plans.
Have we actually seen tariffs come into British Columbia yet? Have we seen the impact of it? How do you blame having a $9.5 billion budget deficit that is likely to be much larger by the time we get to the end of March, when the Americans didn't have anything to do with that?
On housing and healthcare and crime, the government acknowledged more work is needed, promising foreign-trained doctors and touting an increase in police and prosecutions. But EB maintains combating Trump's tariffs is the biggest target.
Regardless of whether your house is bombed or whether you're foreclosed from it because you're fired, makes very little difference to a family.
The agenda laid out will be debated for days to come ahead of the March 4th budget in a legislature featuring a record-high 93 MLAs and 44 BC Conservative opposition members in what will likely be a combative session.
Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
Coming up next, why those traveling by plane have a little more anxiety than usual. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, it's been a tough time to be an air traveler with travel anxiety at the moment, as there has been a higher amount of airplane crashes in the last few months, and CTV's Alex Karpa has more on this story.
4 U.S. airline disasters in 3 weeks, and now the 5th at Toronto's Pearson Airport has passengers on edge.
Definitely that does not motivate me to fly.
Oh my God.
Miroslava Patches has had a lifelong fear of flying.
It's the stress and it's the fear of unknown, and fear not to be understood, fear to make mistake, to miss the plane.
In spite of recent fatal crashes that claimed 85 lives, there isn't necessarily a correlation.
I don't see any connection between these four. It's certainly something to look at.
The Trump administration fired hundreds of FAA employees, including safety workers, highlighting major airline staffing shortages in the U.S. As for how confident passengers feel about flying,
of course, a little bit fear every time when I fly on a plane.
Now it's maybe safer because everyone will be more cautious and careful.
I think it's safe enough.
There's been a couple recent events, but I think overall my flying experience on the safety side was pretty good.
Experts say there can be a significant psychological impact to seeing so many incidents in such a short period of time.
Watching things like that are definitely very traumatizing, very frightening. I think, anytime we experience a sense of trauma, it reduces our sense of safety in the world.
Fatal and non-fatal commercial airline accidents are highly unlikely, especially here in Canada. A recent airline safety study published back in the summer found that between 2018 and 2022, the worldwide death risk per boarding was 1 in 13.7 million. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And now we take a look at the local weather forecast for tonight and for the weekend. For tonight's weather on the north coast, it should be cloudy with a 60% chance of showers. It should be raining sometime before the morning as well. Wind should be coming from the southeast at 20 kilometers per hour, increasing to 60 over the coastal sections overnight. The temperature should be steady near 6 degrees. Terrace and Kitimat should have a 60% chance of flurries with snow beginning sometime before morning time, and the low should be -2. The Bulkley Valley should be mainly cloudy as well, with light snow beginning sometime before morning and a low of -10. Onto your weekly weather forecast. The sun won't be seen on the north coast for quite some time now, as we see a very consistent week of more mild temperatures. Expect 10 to 20 millimeters of rain tomorrow. The high will be 9 degrees on Friday and Saturday, while the low will be 3 degrees on Monday night. Terrace and Kitimat will have some snow or rain for the next couple of days, followed by a few days of rain and showers, where there will also be a bump in temperature. There is a chance of flurries or snow coming back starting next week. The high will be 6 degrees on the weekend, while the low will be 1 degree on Sunday and Monday night. The Bulkley Valley should have snow up until Friday afternoon, where it will then switch to rain, where 8 degrees will be the high on Saturday afternoon with some showers in place. The low will be -1 tomorrow afternoon and Monday night as well. And now we take a look at your Northwest roadside report. For additional updates, make sure to check out drybc.ca. Highway 16 has slippery sections from Prince Rupert to Skeena, limited visibility from Skeena to Doreen, compact snow from Doreen to Walcott, and snowing from Walcott to Sheraton, as well as slippery sections from Sheraton to Vanderhoof. Highway 37 has limited visibility from Terrace to Kitimat, compact snow from Kitwanga to the Yukon border, and bridge maintenance at Miziatin Junction. Highway 37A has compact snow. Highway 118 has compact snow. The Anishka Highway has limited visibility with snow, and Telegraph Creek Road has compact snow. And these were the cameras we're looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, where Canada is seeing a rise and fall of certain products from inflation. Hello again. Well, it's no secret that President Donald Trump wants an end to the Ukraine war, but after a groundbreaking meeting including delegations from Washington and Moscow, one key participant was notably absent from these talks. And here's Joy Malbin with an update from down south.
Overnight, Russia launched dozens of drones into Ukraine, striking its capital.
It will be 3 years next week since Russia invaded its neighbor, seizing territory and destroying thousands of lives. Top diplomats from Washington and Moscow met face to face in a Saudi Arabian palace, discussing ways to end this war.
There has to be concessions made by all sides. We're not going to predetermine what those are. We're certainly not going to negotiate this today.
Notably absent from these high-stakes talks, the Europeans and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. No one decides anything behind our back, says Zelensky, canceling his scheduled meeting with the Saudis, and in spite of assurances from Washington.
The facts will continue to push back on this notion that our allies haven't been consulted. They are being consulted literally almost on a daily basis.
For Vladimir Putin, this is already a win. Re-establishing diplomatic relations with Washington puts Russia back on the world stage. But already Russia is laying down markers, rejecting any European peacekeepers in Ukraine, calling that unacceptable. Washington and Moscow did agree to create teams to support Ukraine peace talks, restore staffing at U.S. and Russian embassies, and explore closer relations and economic opportunities.
No one else has been able to bring something together like what we saw today because Donald Trump is the only leader in the world that can.
Washington is convinced Russia is serious about negotiations to end the war. The big question now, when will President Donald Trump and Putin meet? Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
And for business news, inflation had an uptick in the month of January in Canada after a couple of months on the downturn. Here's Sarah Plowman with a report on what products went up and down around the country.
It's not hard to find somebody feeling squeezed by gas prices.
Always, they are high, but along with all the other prices for the car.
When you add that in food prices too, it's quite expensive.
The price of the pump jumped 8.6% across Canada compared to last January, largely thanks to a huge spike in Manitoba when it brought back its provincial gas tax. Energy was the biggest mover of inflation last month.
It's January in Canada. That's what happens. Everybody reaches for the thermostat.
Annual inflation rose 1.9%, up from a 1.8% bump in December, the first acceleration of inflation in 3 months. The price of vehicles went up too. Restaurant bills went down, so did the cost of alcohol and toys. Purchases part of the 2-month GST tax break that ended this weekend.
The thing about the GST holiday, it's probably distorting some of the data we're getting from StatScan right now.
So it probably held inflation down. People did shift some of their spending to the goods that were GST exempt.
The Bank of Canada cut its key interest rate to 3% in January. With a low loonie and talk of U.S. tariffs and a Canadian counterpunch, there's uncertainty about what's next.
A broad-based tariff applied across the board, that would have a significant impact, I think, on lowering the value of our currency even further and adding to inflationary pressures that way.
The Bank of Canada will announce its next rate decision on March 12th. The same day U.S. President Donald Trump is set to slap a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
And now we take a look at the stock market, where we have a mix of everything today. The Canadian dollar is down 1.5 of a penny. The price of gold is down $12.90. Oil is up 27 cents. Natural gas is also up 27 cents. And aluminum is up $1. In Toronto, the TSX is down 22.68 points. The Venture Index is down 3.10. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 71.25, and NASDAQ is up about 15. Still ahead, how Nova Scotia is celebrating the success of its hockey players. Welcome back to our final segment. Well, internally, the Canadian Armed Forces has a goal of getting back to full strength by the year of 2029. While top military officials couldn't say today if Donald Trump's annexation threats could help bolster recruitment, they did not officially rule it out. And now over to Rachel Aiello over in Ottawa.
So pressure's on.
In an increasingly volatile world, the Canadian military is aiming to recruit and retain
thousands more members within a few years.
We need to transform our military to adapt to what the threat of today and the future looks like.
Amid a long-standing personnel shortage, today, senior military officials gave an update on efforts to attract and train enough troops to hit their target of more than 71,000 regular force members and 30,000 reservists. From allowing recruits to begin basic training faster and expanding the applicant pool to include permanent residents, to targeted online ads and a more digital-friendly application process.
Right now, our recruiting system is not as agile as it needs to be.
The military is also no longer disqualifying applicants with certain medical conditions by default, allowing those with ADHD, anxiety, allergies, or asthma to be deemed fit to serve on a case-by-case basis.
Any and all conditions are on the table for consideration for enrollment.
On track to meet their recruitment goal for the year, in the last month, the Armed Forces received roughly 1,000 more applications than it did this time last year. But officials stopped short of attributing that uptick to the surge of nationalism that's been seen since Donald Trump's return to the White House.
So far, we're not tracking anyone who's coming in saying that that's the reason that they're joining.
And as for the U.S. president's threats to annex Canada,
well, militarily, we're not there at all.
with two Liberal leadership candidates promising to increase the salaries of Canadian Armed Forces members as part of plans to speed up overall defense spending, today the Chief of Defense Staff stopped short of saying if she thinks the troops are underpaid.
And over in Nova Scotia, despite it being one of the smaller provinces, the locals are celebrating the excellent talent that is being developed in their community that have reached the NHL and also made it onto Team Canada. This includes notable names such as team captain Sidney Crosby. Paul Hollingsworth has our final story of the day.
That was Crosby bouncing it in, and now it's going to be done. What a play by Sidney Crosby.
He is Captain Canada. He's probably the best player to ever wear the Canadian jersey.
At 37, Sidney Crosby seems to be getting better with age. As Canada prepares for Thursday's championship game against the U.S., they are being led by Crosby, who is also the top scorer in the tournament.
That's what you need to win consistently, and we're going to need another great effort here in the next one.
A win over the U.S. would likely set off a nationwide celebration for a team that is riding a fever wave of fan support.
I think we feel like it's our sport, and we're the best at it. We've been the best at it for decades now, and we're not about to relinquish that title.
Crosby's teammates include fellow Nova Scotians Nathan McKinnon and Brad Marchand. 3 players on the same roster from our country's 4th smallest province sparks a surge of hometown pride in this community.
He's just so happy to be playing for Team Canada and putting that jersey on and playing with Nate and playing with Brad and, you know, doing our whole province proud.
It's difficult to put into words the level of affection and appreciation people in Nova Scotia have for Sidney Crosby. Safe to say people around here are cheering for Canada with a high level of national pride. They are cheering for the 3 Nova Scotians on this roster with provincial pride. And they are cheering for Sidney Crosby, Nova Scotia's most famous hockey export, to have another golden moment. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia.
That'll be all for our cast tonight. Thank you very much for watching and have a good evening.